Hello, and welcome to Environmental Chemistry 2021 here at Wayland High School. My name is Cortland Ferreria-Douglas, and I'm really excited to be able to come in person, as well as be able to introduce labs in a hands-on way. A little bit about who I am, just to let you know. I am originally from Seattle. Specifically, I'm from Tacoma, if any of that means anything to anyone, um, for anyone who may have gone to the SeaTac airport or any of that. This is my 8th year of teaching. It's the first year here at Wayland High School. I've previously taught at Brookline High School, at Pope John the 23rd, at Codman Academy, in Medford, and I was previously in Everett teaching biology, teaching chemistry, teaching algebra 2, and health at different times. One of the things that I feel like I'm really fortunate is that prior to becoming a teacher, I was a chemical analyst for about 2.5 years. I've worked for Roberto Sausage Company, which is a type of beef jerky. I don't know if you have it out here on the East Coast, but it's definitely really prominent in the West Coast. I've taught at Pepsi Co., looking and doing research for as a quality assurance technician, looking at soft drinks. I've worked for Fred Hutch Cancer Institute on government contracts, looking at tuberculosis and other types of treatments. I worked at Alpha Analytical, if you remember the BP oil spill. I've worked in a lot of different places, and I feel like that's given me a lot of context for the different ways that chemistry can help impact your life. As far as hobbies are concerned, I really love poetry. One of my favorite things is when students give me a challenge to write a poem. If anybody would like to put a challenge in any of the parent forums or anything like that, I think they're always just really, really fun to be able to add that level of engagement to our class. One thing I'm always really fortunate about is the fact that I was given practices that really help me understand the world, understand myself, and be able to kind of navigate the nuances of my own mental health. And journaling and writing is one of those really big things. There's actually a club that I'm hoping to facilitate or create that has to do not so much with mental health as much as it is about identity and then journaling. One thing I really love is photography. You'll see a link in the email that looks at some of the photography that happens in my classroom throughout the year, in the hopes to be able to capture what are some of the amazing moments that are in Wayland, looking at the community and really being able to celebrate the experience that students have while they're in my class. I really love tennis and basketball. Oftentimes you can see me hitting or playing tennis after school outside. And so if for whatever reason you or your student doesn't see me here after school, I'm probably outside at one of the courts playing tennis. I really love music. I hope that your students are introduced to a lot of really amazing music. I grew up around a lot of really old school men who lived and breathed forms of Motown. And so Motown music is something I always really love. And then I grew up in hip hop. And so hip hop is something that that's near and dear to my heart. I want to talk about how your particular student can get help. One of my favorite things is trying to get students to realize that getting help is an essential part of their own success. And so when I think about that, I think about all of the different things that students need in terms of agency and executive functioning, as well as how we can help students facilitate that need and teach them how to use the free time that they do have at this school in a really positive way. As you can see on the right, you should see my schedule. In the email, there should also be a copy of my schedule. All of these different blocks, any place that I happen to have um, something blank, your student can arrange to be able to meet with me in order for them to get help. One thing is I'm here every single day. So every single day I'm here after school. They can get help before school, after school. Before school, I get here every single day, at least at 7 a.m. And then once again, after school, I'm usually here until about 4:30 or 5 o'clock. You can also get help during lunch as well as any of the free blocks. If you happen to see a block that is or that's not occupied, your student can arrange a time to be able to meet with me. These are also good times for you as the parent to either contact me through phone or um, email, as well as if you would like to arrange a Zoom or Google Meet, because I think that those things are important. One of the benefits that came from our current situation is the invention or the adoption of Zoom and Google Meets or other platforms that allow you to connect with other individuals in the class. And so I think it's really amazing to give students the opportunity. Let's say that they can't get here at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and they need help. All they have to do is just send me an email and go like, hey, Mr. Douglas, do you think that we can jump on Zoom at 6:30, at 7 o'clock? As long as it's okay with their parents, I don't see a reason why they can't have that level of availability. I think it's extremely helpful and extremely important for students to learn how to get help and then hopefully be able to rely on that help to be able to see it as a resource. Although I teach chemistry, I've taught all of the sciences at some point in my academic career. I've also taught math and I have an English degree. And so a lot of times students will send me essays and go like, hey, Mr. Douglas, could you edit this or look at this? Or I have to write a paper. Could we sit down and brainstorm some really amazing ways to do things? And so I hope that your student feels like our classroom is a good space to be able to get the help that they need. One of the things that I do want to talk about is chemistry. Chemistry is one of my favorite things. And so I'm really, really excited that they're able to be in my class. I hope that I'm able to communicate the love that I have for chemistry. Some people say, is your goal to try to make people love chemistry? No, but what I hope is that they come away from their experience understanding why I love it. One of the biggest things that I'll tell you, and I usually tell this to my students, is the fact that when I took chemistry, I actually struggled a lot in chem. I got all D's in college. And so it was something that I totally understand when students come to me and they tell me that it's both challenging and it's something that's difficult to grasp. I hope that this class challenges them, and I hope that they feel like that challenge is worth it. One of the things that I really loved about chemistry, though, and the reason why I kept taking classes, even though they were the worst classes that I was taking in college, is because of the fact that chemistry is the first class that really kind of opened my eyes to the amazing reactions and the amazing things that can happen in the real world. These aren't like special effects or anything. This isn't movie magic. These are real things that you can do in your real life. The other thing is, as someone who grew up on comic books and anime, one of my favorite things about chemistry, it was the first class that truly came together and tried to explain or allowed me to explain some of the really cool things that happen in fantasy or in things that I saw in terms of comic books and cartoons or television shows that I would watch. One of the things that I really enjoy about chemistry or environmental chem is, why is this important? Because of the fact that we've seen the importance of understanding the effect that we have on the entire Earth. Whether you're talking about climate change and how important that is for our present and our future, or if we're talking about moments like the vaccine, where something could happen that changes the way that society functions, we might need to understand science in order for us to be able to stay engaged, for us to be able to potentially help out with the response, and then not only helping out, possibly be able to fight against disinformation. And so chemistry is a class that really is about trying to understand those things. One of the things that I love about the way that I teach chemistry is that I always think it's important for us to bring our culture into our classroom. The real world should exist someplace in our walls. I always think it's really interesting that real important events will happen and students will go all day and not talk about them or have anyone mention how important those moments are. I also think about my own life and how there were so many individuals who helped build me up. Think about individuals like Denzel Washington or Mae Jemison. I think about people or things like Reading Rainbow. I think about important events or things that I should think about, like the Little Rock Nine or Suicide Prevention Month. I think about people like Stan Lee, who touched my life and taught me to read. These things are important and they impacted my life. And I think that it's our responsibility to pass those on. At the beginning of each class, there's usually some form of culture or pride curriculum to consider when we start to think about how we want to approach our day. Chemistry is important. I hope I can impress upon you that. But it is equally important to never forget the human element. That also includes mindfulness practices. One of the things that I feel like I'm very fortunate in is the fact that I've had individuals in my life who really helped me to have tools to be able to understand myself a little bit better, as well as be able to give me tools to be able to manage my mental health. Part of that involves some of the things that we like to do in our class. Talking circles, where we're able to talk about certain issues as they come up, prompt jar or journaling, being able to respond to different prompts in a really important way. And then the forum or word on the street is how we're able to capture student feedback from or in order to make our class better. One of the things that I found is that students don't know how to give feedback. And so it takes some time for them to be able to understand how they can give meaningful feedback in a really powerful way. We're also going to be doing some career planning opportunities where we explore career clusters, think about what we would like to do in our career. We're going to look at some college profiling, thinking about what colleges students want to go to, and then talking to them deeply about what are some alternatives to college if it happens to be they might not feel like college is appropriate for them. We also have other enrichment opportunities in our class, looking at Blackish, some films or movies that might enrich students' life. If we happen to have miniseries or documentaries, and we also have some skill building things as well that hopefully enrich your students independent of their chemistry class. Is it required to participate in these moments? No, but I usually have or feel that students usually feel like it's a beneficial thing for the people who take part. I want to talk a little bit about how our class runs. First of all, you do not need anything in this class. The needed materials portion here is just because there are some families, some parents, some students who say that, Mr. Douglas, I need you to tell me, or I need some supplies for this class. If that happens to be you, which is totally fine, some people really like a 3-ring binder, paper, pencils. And I always tell students that your best self is always something that you should bring with you. If you want, you can have some dividers. And I tell students that these are usually the categories if you want to be thinking about how to use them. How do we get homework assignments? Basically, it works like this, where every single day or every single unit, we get packets that look like this. And so when we think about our packets, the packets have all of the assignments and work for the entire unit, okay? And so they get it on day one, and we work through the packet from the beginning all the way to the end. Once we're done with that content, we can be able to turn this in. One of the things that I like about my class is the flexibility that it gives students. I myself am not a teacher who has or requires students to turn in assignments the next day or even 2 days from then. I think with all of the different classes that students are taking, the extracurriculars that we want them to be able to engage and participate in, and then managing both home life as well as their own mental health, I think it's really nice to give students flexibility. They do need to eventually turn it in. Usually it's a week from quiz day. But what students get are they get packets, they get labs, and then they get a review. One of the things that I did over the COVID-19 experience, since we had everything virtual last year, it did give me the ability to create teacher slides as well as student slides that they could use. Every single assignment that we have in our class can be completed, not physically, if they don't want to use the packets, they can complete them digitally. And so it's not required that they ever have to complete something physically, but they can do it digitally. And I like the fact that students have that as a flexibility and a resource. And your student can feel like they would like to take advantage of that. They totally can. If they miss a day or if they miss a homework assignment, every single day that they miss, they lose 1 point. And they'll lose 1 point until, of course, they reach 50%. I always think that students should be able to turn assignments in at some point and get credit. And so at the end of the quarter, as long as they turn it in within that quarter, they should always get some points, assuming that they did 100% completion of it. How do you get extensions? I myself think that students should always be able to have the opportunity to get an extension on their assignments. There are some students who I know are participating in a lot of different clubs. They're participating in a lot of different assignments, a lot of different sports, and some of them have jobs. I think that it's important to be able to have flexibility. And so if you have a student who is coming in at 9 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., or sometimes there are moments where students do need a mental health day. If that happens to be your student, feel free to either you yourself or your student can email me and be able to get an extension. No questions asked. We'll just be able to say, hey, we'll put a pause on it, make sure that student is in a really good place and that they can feel confident about how they're doing. There are some days where we can't get an extension. Let's say it's the end of the quarter or something like that, but I'll try my best to let students know and let you know as well. In this particular class, we don't have any percentages. Everything goes into a student's total points. And so I really like that because it means that the tests and the homework don't have the same value, but they can have similar values. I myself am someone who maybe I wasn't the greatest test taker, but I was really good at staying on top of my homework. I think if you master your homework, you should get credit for that. All because you don't or all because you struggle with homework doesn't mean you should have a horrible grade in the class. And so it gives you that flexibility. Quizzes happen every 2 to 3 weeks, um, and it's based on all of the content that we've learned so far. I know that some people have IEPs and 504s for extra time. If you need extra time will be granted. The hope is that you can try to complete it in the same day. If not, we'll try to negotiate a time during one of your free blocks or some other time to be able to complete those. Students are granted 3 quiz retakes for the entire year, and they need to make sure that they budget it for the entire year. However, if you do, if you happen to get 90% or higher on a quiz, then not only do you get some prizes, which we'll talk about in just a second, you also have increased the amount of retakes that you have by 1. And so I think that's really helpful for students. Okay. Let's talk about rewards. In the questionnaire, you'll see, or in the Google form, you'll see a question about suggestions that might help student performance. One of my favorite moments was, when I was fundraising, was when I would get prizes for how much I had fundraised. And so I thought one year, what would be cool? I thought one year it would be cool if we got prizes if we did well in assessments. And so if you get 90% or higher, then you get shouted out. If you get shouted out, then you get 1 token. And students will get these tokens throughout the year, and they can turn these tokens in for certain prizes. If you get a perfect score, you get 2 tokens. If you happen to get the high score, you automatically qualify for the automatic snack removal. This isn't to punish students who do poorly, but it's more to reward students for doing really, really well. I myself think that it's a really, really cool thing to see, and I hope that students get something out of it when they come into our class. Some other things that came from student suggestions happens to be a student resource center. They do not need to bring anything to class. Everything that they need is here in class if they need it. We have pencils and paper. We have paper clips. We have hole punches. We have scissors, tape. We have calculators. We also have food, masks, things like Band-Aids, as well as lotion and Kleenexes. It's important to be able to have students be comfortable in this class and be able to feel like they have everything that they need provided. I also know that this school has a printing center here at the school. However, I always think that it's important that we have a printing center available so that students can get what they need. And so in every single room that I teach in, there's always a personal printer, just in case they happen to need to or want to make copies of any of the notes that they take. Or let's say that you happen to miss a class, it's a good opportunity for you to get any of the worksheets that you might be missing. The other thing I'll say is that we have a self-management box in our class. Our class, or I think, students today, I feel like they have to go through a lot more than other people before them. And so I think that it's important to be able to give them ways to manage it. There are some students who wrote in their About Me slides or in their Meet a Student portion that one thing that they want to focus on, one thing they wish they could improve is their ability to focus better. I can't think of anything that can help more than some of the different things that are held within the self-management box. And so I would encourage your student, if they would like, to utilize those resources. Also, if there's anything that you think you'd like to add to the self-management box, please, 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 please feel free to let me know what those things might be. And I would love to provide them. We also have essential oils in our class, and some students really enjoy that as a way to help manage themselves. All of these things I provide with my own money. And so one thing I do want to appreciate is for those families who go like, hey, I would like to contribute. Feel free to feel like you can contribute anything to our public space or to our classroom space, because I think that's important. One of the last things that I want to talk about is the parent assignment. I want to thank those people or those families and guardians who have already submitted and turned in those parent assignments. You can still submit those parent assignments if you haven't done so. The deadline to submit the parent assignment is October 2nd. And so we have about 2 or 3 more weeks to be able to complete the parent assignment. If you do so, your students will get extra credit. But more importantly, I can't stress to you the importance of both your feedback as well as your students' feedback. And so please fill out the attached Google form. It helps me be able to understand how students are taking in our classroom experience, ways that I can help you and your family, as well as things that we can do to improve. The one thing I do ask that you always give your most honest response. I can tell you that the best, if you love or if your student loves the experience that they have in my class, I always tell students it's because of the fact that I had amazing students and families who gave me real things to think about in my class. Some of them were constructive. Some of them were things where a parent or a teacher or a student would come to me and tell me that, hey, my student needed this and you didn't give them, or you didn't give my student these things. If that is true, please don't hesitate to reach out, email me, tell me. My phone number is also in the email. Feel free to text or call and go like, hey, I want you to know that I think my student needs some more support because they are either struggling or we just want to make sure that they're successful. I think that's really amazing, and I hope that you feel empowered to do so. Thank you, and I hope that we can work together in order to make this a really, really, really good, positive year. The last thing I want to say is I want to stress how important it is for parent feedback. In this email or someplace on Google Classroom, there should be a place for you to be able to answer any of these questions. Only 2 of the questions are required. You could put your name. Don't feel that you have to though, but you can put your name or names. You can put the student name. I think it's really nice sometimes to associate parents with their student's name. And then basically what I'm going to ask you to do is be as honest as you can. Tell me about your initial impressions of the class. What has your student told you? What sense do you have of our class? What are some questions that you might have about our class? Maybe this introduction or any of the syllabus materials or any of the expectations haven't communicated parts of our class. Feel free to let me know what are some things that I can do to help communicate those things. Are there any concerns or things that I should consider about our class, right? Are there things that you think might be a problem for your student later on? Are there things that I should think of specifically with your student? Or are there things that I should consider as I begin to think about our class? Also, has your student run into any trouble with the amount of homework or with any deadlines that we've had? Excuse me. What are some things that you felt helped your student that worked with teachers in the past. If there are things that a previous teacher or student, a previous teacher has done for your student that you felt like this was a thing that was super helpful, I want to be able to provide something similar, if not add to what was already really amazing support systems in the class. And then the last real question is, what kind of things do you think would help your student perform? Things that we can do in our class. They can be anything at all. Feel free to think outside of the box. The prizes and the rewards, the self-management box, things like that came about because of the fact that families said, like, hey, you know what would be my ideal class? I wish my class had this. Anyway, I hope that this gives a good preview of what our class is like, and I look forward to working with you, working with your student to be able to make our class really, really successful. I welcome you to chemistry, and I'm excited to be able to start the year. Thank you, and you have a good day. Feel free to email me at your leisure.